shadows cold as ice. Dare to listen, pay the price.
Scary TikTok Christmas. James Harper lived alone in a small flat in an old building on the outskirts of London. It was a quiet, unremarkable neighborhood where the faint glow of street lamps barely broke through the darkness at night. James valued his solitude, yet more often than not, he felt trapped within the confines of his own life. He worked as an accountant, rarely leaving his flat except for errands. He had no family and even fewer friends. His only connection to the world was the books he devoured during the long, cold winter evenings. On the morning of December 22nd, James discovered a package outside his door. There was no return address, only his name scrawled on a yellowed label. Inside was a set of antique mantel clocks. The case was heavy, carved from black wood, adorned with patterns that resembled tangled branches. On the back panel was an engraving. "Time does not wait, it only takes." James thought little of it and placed the clock on his bedroom dresser. It began to tick immediately, as if it had been waiting to be wound. That night, at precisely midnight, the clock struck once. The sound woke James from a restless sleep, his heart pounding. He had dreamed of a strange, snow-covered forest. Around him were dark shadows, figures that seemed human but had no faces. They stood silently, their presence filling him with a chilling dread. The next day, James tried to shake off the unease, but the feeling lingered. Something about the clock felt wrong. That evening, he noticed that it chimed again, this time at 11:59, a minute earlier than before. That night, the dream returned. The shadowy figures crept closer, their outlines becoming sharper. Among them, James saw an older version of himself, frail and hunched. His reflection reached out a hand as if to speak, but the only sound was the relentless ticking of the clock. By December 23rd, the clock had begun to strike multiple times. At 11:58, it struck twice. Panicked, James decided to get rid of it. He carried it outside and left it by a rubbish bin. But when he woke the next morning, the clock was back on his dresser, exactly where it had been, as if it had never left. His hands trembled as he examined it again. There was nothing inside to explain how it kept returning. He began to question his sanity. By December 24th, the dreams had become nightmares. Each chime of the clock brought a new horror. In one vision, his flat filled with black water. He thrashed and struggled to breathe as the room submerged. Outside the window stood a figure cloaked in darkness. Its face was obscured, but a whisper echoed from beneath the hood. Soon. Desperate, James hurled the clock into the Thames, watching it sink beneath the icy water. But at 11:57, he heard it chime again. He turned to see it back on the dresser, unscathed. At 11:59, he noticed the engraving on the back had changed. It now read December 25th, midnight. The clock struck 12. James felt his reality shatter. The room filled with a dense, swirling fog. Emerging from the mist were shadows, reflections of himself at different stages of his life. Young, old, weary, and even versions of who he could have been if he had made different choices. The final strike echoed through the room as the shadows closed in. Time seemed to stop. James's breath caught, and then everything went dark. On the morning of December 25th, police found an empty flat. The clock sat on the dresser, silent. A week later, the same package arrived at a new address. The label read, Mr. Evans, Chicago. The clock's work is never done. Time always takes what it is owed. If you enjoyed this chilling tale, don't forget to like the video, share it with someone who loves a good scare, and subscribe for more stories that will keep you awake at night. Have you ever received a gift that didn't feel quite right? Share your experiences in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And remember, time is always ticking. But for whom?